Well, it's another episode here with Wake Up with Casey. And today I have a very special guest joining us today. And, I talk about, the beliefs programs, emotional, energetic traumas, and, we go through experiences, the healing, transformation, and all of that. But this guest has a unique and her own self some experiences and what she's learned and gained and healed. And she even wrote 2020's best book. She has an award for this, and it's God Came to My Garage Sale. So please welcome Dr. Marni Hill Foderaro.
Hey, Kimberly.
Marty!
Hi. Thanks for having me on, Casey.
I am like when I got your email and God came to my garage sale. I have to be honest. I'm like, "Oh God, what now? What's the, essence of this story?" And then when I looked further into it, I'm like, "Oh my God, she's the one I need to have on my show to talk about this." Because at
Yeah.
first I thought it was a religious kind of base thing.
Mhm.
And, books, could be deceiving titles and whatnot. But if you look deeper into it, you get a bigger picture like, "Oh, okay." So, I am just so stoked, and I just like, wow. I want to know, like, how, you've experienced life challenges and you learn to put goodness, compassion, honesty, and we have some technical error here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay.
You
We
were
froze up
frozen.
and I was like, "Oh
Yep.
no, what happened?"
Yep. You froze a couple times.
But I mean, like, what happened? And then, you know, your journey and your awakening that led you to God Came to My Garage Sale.
Well, my journey is similar actually to so many other people's journeys. You go along living life, busy, raising a family, living the American dream, and I was, and but there was a defining moment that I knew I needed to leave my 27-year marriage. My values of honesty and goodness and fiscal responsibility and fidelity, all of those values that I hold very dear were not the same values of who I was married to. And it was a very scary time, but I knew that I had to follow my instincts and just escape, without an escape plan, unfortunately, because I did endure a lot of losses. I lost my home, which um, gosh, I was hoping to live in the rest of my life. And, was told it was paid off for 10 years, but it was in foreclosure. And lost my money and lost my assets, and I can lose all these things, and people do lose material possessions to different scenarios, but I in the midst of all this, I also lost my two adult children to parental alienation, which was just trauma at its worst, and luckily they were adults when I chose to divorce. They were 20 and 23, but it was still just absolutely unnatural and devastating to have these children you've raised for 2 decades, very close relationship, just all of a sudden not be in your life, and to learn that it's all because of a false narrative and someone's malevolent intention to kind of use them as a weapon against you, because they want you destroyed because you've figured out their number. But anyway, I've always handled challenges and adversity with love and light and goodness. I look at anything that I go through that's challenging as a life lesson that I am meant to experience on my journey. So in the midst of trying to, you know, put the pieces of the puzzle together, I had to have a garage sale. But at this garage sale, I was filled with gratitude, and I was thankful for what I experienced, even though at the same time I was losing everything. And some miracles, were presented to me that really caught my attention. And there were so many that I couldn't ignore. And it prompted me to really dive into the research on near death experiences and spiritually transformative encounters to really understand what I experienced. I'm someone who really, I want proof and I want evidence and I want, I just need more confirmation. Um, and I sure got it. I sure got it. And the experiences were so profound that I wanted to write about them. And I wanted to bring awareness that there are signs and synchronicities around us that so many of us ignore because we're busy living life. But sometimes it takes a traumatic emotional situation, that hits you to the core, and it can look different for different people. Um, that really gets you, contemplating, is there something more going on here? Could God actually come to a garage sale?
Well, wow. Um, you know, you mentioned earlier about people getting busy. I look at it that they're stuck in a program and a belief system. They're really not living life.
Right.
They're actually accustomed to other people's beliefs that they took on themselves. And they're really truly not living life. And that's why there's chaos. There is, they're not fulfilled. They're not satisfied. They're unhappy. They're miserable. Then you get the sicknesses and the disease because of one stress, and they're in survival mode 24/7.
Right, definitely. When you're in kind of a survival mode, like you said, you're in fight or flight, you've got the cortisol running, and your emotional stress can lead to some physical ailments and you're when you're not really living life. I really thought though that I was living life. But I was also ignoring so many signs, so many red flags that were really in my face to say, some things are not right. And I've learned now the hard way that you need to pay attention to your gut intuition, your feeling that if something is not right, you know, if you've seen certain things or learned certain things that someone has told you, no, you didn't see that correctly, you're mistaken, whatever, realize that, there's more to it and you need to follow your own gut intuition.
Well, it's more of the gut, the heart, and the mind. When the mind, because we have three brains,
Mhm.
one is in the mind, one is in the heart, and one is in our digestive system. And when they're all in alignment, oh my God, intuition is right on. And, you know, we're not taught, how to work with that's actually our soul communicating with us to guide us, warn us, and what we need to do, what is the next step, what not to do, pause, hold up for a second, and we get little bits of it. But if we were taught about that and learned how to have that relationship communicating with it, oh my gosh, everybody would be better off,
Right, right,
and they wouldn't be in the reality that they created themselves by ignoring the signs.
right.
So what was you mentioned about, having your garage experiencing synchronicities and whatnot, and you started looking into near death experiences.
Right.
Why the near death experience?
Well, because the spiritually transformative encounters or experiences, which turns out what happened to me, they're very similar to near death experiences. And actually, my life partner now, who was a friend back then, um, was going to the IANDS meetings, the International Association for Near Death Studies. We were in the Chicago suburbs at the time. And so in Evanston, Illinois, once a month, they had meetings where they would bring in guests to talk about, otherworldly encounters. And so he was already going to all of these. And so I started to join with him and realize that, wait a minute, what I experienced was very similar to this, where, it's almost like an out of body experience. Because, like in my particular case, and it's different for everyone, um, at the same time, it's very similar for everyone too. But my experiences were all in slow motion. And the ones I continue to have are kind of when I'm in a deep state of gratitude, and there's just like no time. There's just like no time. And that is something that has been expressed by people that have had near death experiences. I just didn't have to flatline, and physically leave this earth. The trauma was so severe for me that it was almost just as profound as actually dying and having these experiences and coming back to life to be able to talk about them. So that's how the two kind of are connected. Very, very similar. And that provided me with a lot of proof and validation. I got to know um, Dr. Eben Alexander and his life partner, Karen Newell. He's a Harvard neurosurgeon who died from meningitis, had a near death experience. No physical way that he could have experienced what he did. And now his research on consciousness has made, huge impacts with the literature and the proof that there is heaven. In fact, his book is called Proof of Heaven. He was one of many. He's just pretty well known, but there were, hundreds of other people's accounts that I heard, and they were so very authentic, and it just made a lot of sense to kind of understand what I experienced at this garage sale. And it wasn't all at the garage sale. Some of the experiences were after, and some of them were before. Um, I wrote it as a spiritual fiction, and it was endorsed by James Redfield, who wrote the Celestine Prophecy, which was very, very cool. I
Yes.
I know I got to know him, and he originally wasn't going to endorse anyone. He just said, I'm kind of doing my own Celestine Vision tour, and he has a number of books, and he is so well known. I didn't think I stood a chance, to have him endorse my book, but I did say, I totally get it, but please take my manuscript. If you have a little time, you might want to glance at it. And 2 months later, he called me back saying he loved my story, and all of it's grounded on real experiences. Most fiction is. And he said, I'm endorsing you. And then I actually even had the foreword written by the IANDS founding director from Santa Barbara, California, as well as the founding president of the Chicago IANDS, where I was attending. So, then a number of other people kind of came into my life to support what I was doing. And it really has resonated with a lot of people. Like you said, it won that award. It just won a couple weeks ago the 2022 Hollywood Book Fest Award as the runner-up in spirituality category. So there's, it's already becoming to be a very popular book club book nationwide, even internationally. So it's resonating with people. I think people are wanting to hear about these experiences now more than ever.
Because wouldn't you agree that, I mean, I could share some of my experiences, um, going through, domestic violence, being married not once but twice, and started questioning things. And I had that moment in my life where I was so frustrated. I already had 3 kids, two with my second marriage and whatnot, and I'm like, To be honest, like, what the fuck? Is this all there is to life? Like, they can't, like, it can't be, but if this is the way it is, check me out because I'm done. Like, I got to that point where I was so frustrated and so fed up that I'm like, I didn't really want to live here if this is the way it's going to be. And then I'm like, if there is more and the grass is greener on the other side from where I'm standing, then show me the truth because I'm done. Like,
Right.
I'm done with the bullshit with religion
Hmm. A lot of
because,
a lot of hypocrisy with the religion, with the organized religion.
yes. So I'm like, show me I went, I want the fucking truth.
Hmm.
And then that's when, like, something happened, something shifted, and then people started showing up. Like, Dr. Joe Vitelli.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
you know, he was the first, and then, Margaret, Tuttle, um, and the other people because there was just, like, key words. Like, then my like, everything opened up to where I was lit like, I'd hear a key word, and I would pause, I'm like, "Wait," and I would get hit.
Right. It's almost like you have to ask the universe, and you got to a breaking point, and your plea was to ask the universe, tell me the truth, and you were shown the truth. And I think in my case, I got to, I never wanted to check out, myself. I always kind of wanted to keep going one foot in front of the other, but I sure wanted some answers. Why do bad things happen to good people? But
Yeah.
but then I also, in this whole journey, and we can get into it a little bit more because I did write a 5-book series called True Deceit, False Love.
Yes.
And, you know, through that research and that writing process, I realized that the whole healing journey is tremendous, and it does not happen overnight. It is very much a process. And part of the process is you need to look at your own intergenerational family trauma. You need to go back to your own family of origin to find out what your foundation is, and what is your role in some of these relationships. That's not saying that you take part in the abuse that has happened to you. No one should experience abuse, but the fact that your boundaries were not strong enough to protect yourself and love yourself enough to say, you don't treat people this way, this is wrong. Or for our eyes to open of just unethical behavior that we allow because we're kind of predisposed to keep ourselves quiet and just plug along, and we keep thinking it's going to get better. We almost project our goodness of being honest, loving, caring, forgiving people onto other people, thinking they are wired that same way, when really not everyone's wired that way.
No. And here's the thing, Marnie, that really, like, psychologically fucked me up. I
Hmm.
was brought up in the Southern Baptist religion. You got to stay pure, wait until you're married to have sex. And then I experienced being sexually abused at 13 and
Oh,
then raped at 15. So that, like, psychologically, mentally messed me up because then, being bombarded with, you have to be this way, you should act this way, dress this way, you got to be this way, do not question the word of God and all this. And I'm like, and I experienced that. I'm like, well, if God does exist, why would he allow me to be
right.
abuse? Why is there violence? Why is there hatred? Why is there, women being mistreated the way that? Like, it did not make sense to me. Like, well, if God's an all loving God and you say God loves all his children and everything, then why are people fighting against each other? And why are women being abused? That's
Right.
not God.
And there are men being abused too. And unfortunately, the most devastating is children are being abused.
Yes.
Innocent children are kind of caught by, these malevolent individuals, and their lives are damaged in so many ways. It's,
It's trauma,
yeah, big time.
emotional, energetic trauma. But here's what I find fascinating, Marty. When I started looking at the generational,
Yeah.
okay, And looking at the cycle and the patterns in the generational line of my family between my mother and father, oh
Mhm.
my God, it was like opening up a can of worms. And I was like,
Right.
holy shit, I need to stop this. The pot stops here because I didn't want my children going forward, or my future generations. But then it was like, that DNA ancestry thing.
Yeah.
You sign up and then it's like a rabbit hole. Well,
Right.
that's what it was like with this emotional energetic traumas. I'm like, how far back does this go? Because here's the one key that I
Mhm.
learned from Greg Braden was, okay, emotional energetic trauma. We're all energy and matter.
Mhm.
But then if you look at timelines in history, even back to our misconceptions of our origins and how we were created,
Mhm.
the woman, it has the baby inside her. Whatever the woman is feeling and experiencing, so is that child.
Mhm.
So that energy, that feeling, that experiences is just getting transferred over to the child. So the child comes into this world and then is bombarded with other stuff on top of what the mother experienced. And then it's like it keeps going forward. It's like paying it forward in a negative way.
Right. And, but so many of us are blind to what we're really going through until after we escape it. I heard someone recently say, we don't know how heavy the backpack is until we take it off. um, because really, we might be fooling ourselves that everything is just fine. I stayed in my marriage 27 years, yet I knew before I got married that I shouldn't have married this particular individual. There were so many red flags, but I just was blinded because I wanted a family. The timing seemed perfect. We were in similar careers. I mean, just you make up all sorts of excuses. And then gaslighting is such a huge part of what happens to us. We are sort of gaslit to believe that we're not worthy, that we're looking at things wrong, that we don't have capabilities. And, it's amazing what, this false reality that we can live in until something very traumatic happens and your light bulb goes on. And I am so thankful my light bulb went on. I mean, however, I made the choice to escape that marriage. I had no idea that I would lose my two adult children. I mean, it's been almost a decade, without having them in my life. That is so unnatural. I mean, anyone who is a loving parent, could empathize with, you know the pain and trauma of not having your kids in your life. And my abuser flat out told me he would be, he said, if you divorce me, I'm taking your home, your money, and your children. And he did that. And you would think that, a reasonably intelligent person and a loving parent would never have to experience this, but there's such manipulation and so much aligning that goes on with a false narrative or rewriting memories, or they want you erased. They're destroying you, but you're the focus, but the kids are the ones that you know are suffer even more. It's an unbelievably family dynamic that is just so devastating. But then when you do the intergenerational work, you see that there was a lot of unhealthiness between your own parents, your
Mhm.
abuser's parents, even though they deny that, they think they had a perfect childhood, and that's their narrative they're going to say up until the end. But the reality is no, no, there's damage all around, and it can even go back further. So it takes a very strong person to get to a point in their lives where they say the buck stops here. I'm not I'm going to expose it, or I'm going to walk away from it. Whatever they're going to do, they're going to release it. And in doing that, like even in my case in midlife, I'm 61 now. I had to make some tough decisions about some family members to say, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to stay in this relationship the way it is, because it's very unhealthy. And it might be, they might enjoy it. There are other people that love chaos. They love confrontation. They could be wired a different way. And I need to protect myself now. And I've gotten myself physically to a safer place, moving from the Chicago suburbs to the Caribbean. um, as much as I can, putting distance between the abuser and myself. Although, they're obsessive, and they will continue to stalk and harass you and take you back to court, you know, um, until their dying day, probably, because they're stuck. Like I've heard you say before, some people are energetically stuck, and they're not as evolved as those of us are that have experienced these things. We've dealt with the trauma, we're working on the journey, we take ownership for our role in it, and we just are trying to move ahead in a very healthy way, physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Yeah, because I am doing the same thing you are.
Mhm,
And I'm getting ready to, like, you have to cut the cord.
mhm,
Just because you had parents, and I learned about this about the love, you know, and from my own spiritual experiences that I've been having and I continue to have.
mhm.
Oh my God, I'm like, ooh, I
Yeah,
haven't forgot, like, this is exciting. This is
it
like, and it
is.
makes me curious. And then it's like Dr. Joe Vitale at the beginning. He goes, you need to start ask question everything. What is it that you believe? Is
Mhm.
it belief because of what you were told to believe? Did you even question it? And see, growing up, I did question some of those beliefs. Well, why is this, that? Don't argue with me because I
Right.
said so.
Yeah.
And I feel like
Fortunately, a lot of parents did respond that way, and some, like I think in my case, my questions were answered with more questions. Well, why do you think? And so, even with that, which is a very philosophical approach and could be good in a classroom at a college level, it may not be good for a kid who wants to have some answers. But then again, the truth of what the world is all about may not be so clearly seen by our parents, and
because they have their
that's why we
points.
ask questions. It's a journey.
Yeah, because when you're young, you're in that acquisitive phase.
Hmm.
So it's like I feel a lot of times like they didn't really have the answer, so they just wanted to shut you up, shut
Hmm.
you down, and go read your Bible. The answer's in the Bible. I'm like, no, it's not.
Now, and I didn't have that experience because I grew up in an atheist household. So we had no exposure to religion, no exposure to spirituality. A lot of good things I believe I was exposed to, as far as the love of humanity and the wonder of nature and the acceptance of people and places that are very different than mine. So there were a lot of great things I believe I gleaned from my childhood experiences. But, really, it was kind of a journey on my own to try to answer the questions that I had
Right.
and continue to have. I continue to want proof of things. I continue to ask for guidance. I'm continuing to heal on this journey, and but I feel like I'm really on my way. And I feel that the writing has really been therapeutic for me. I think we all need to find what works for us, um, to follow our passions, or to try to make sense of everything. And for me, the writing really makes sense a lot. And then to be able to write in a creative way, not just an informational way, but in a way where there's poetry and play on words, and a survivor's workbook, and just putting it out there to help other people on their journey of discovery is just so very rewarding. I don't have all the answers. I don't profess to uh, say that, okay, my way is the only way,
Mhm.
but certainly I'm adding to the resources that are already out there for people to explore and see what fits for them. And I believe our voices matter. So, like Kimberly, our candid conversation right here, with our very comfortable back and forth about our experiences, this could really resonate with some people in your audience because, you know, I think it's through these conversations that we get permission to ask questions and you know, say, hey, it's okay, I'm not alone in this.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why I felt led. Like I heard it's time, and I'm like, okay, time for what? Coffee? And I kept, it's time. And I'm like, time for what? Can you please be more, because that's the way sometimes, you know, spirit guides and your higher self talks to you. It's little subtle, little words.
Right, right.
And then, and I'm always questioning, like, okay, what is it time for now? Like, can you sort of give me some more insight on this?
Right,
Detail,
right.
please. And then it led to my podcast.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I'm like, oh, okay. This is like, because I felt led to go back to school to brush up on my skills.
Hmm.
Then boom, during the pandemic, of October, this coming October, it'd be 2 years since I've had
Yeah.
this podcast. And then it went virtual. I'm like, oh, now it's like, now I'm connecting the dots. I always tell everybody, be like Nancy Drew or the Hardy Boys.
Right, right.
Connect the dots, because whatever little passion that you have, your soul is communicating why you came here.
Right. And you know, we're those of us too that have been through abusive relationships or unhealthy environments, we've had to learn how to connect the dots. And so this is just an extension of connecting the dots to make sense of everything.
And then you look at your experiences like, okay, it's not as painful. It doesn't hurt as bad.
Hmm.
And you learn to just go with the flow.
Right.
Go
And
with
knowledge
what's
is
an
power.
experience. Don't label it as good or bad. It's
Right.
just an experience. And then you ask yourself, what am I supposed to learn from this experience?
Hmm.
Because it's happened, it's come to me. And I used to question, well, did I create this myself? What's going on? I would like understanding about this, of why I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing. And it could be something from your past that you didn't learn, and it just come about full circle again in a different form for you to
Hmm.
get it, so you don't have to continue like repeating the lesson until you learn it, kind of thing. Would you
Right.
agree?
Yeah, you said that so beautifully. Yep.
So, and it's like, when, unfortunately, I'm so sorry that you are going through like parent alienation, your kids just, but then I'm looking at it, well, what are they learning?
Right, right. I have to realize that, you know, as painful and as hard as it is for me, it's got to be even more so for them because they're stuck. But I'll tell you, knowledge is power. And understanding what parental alienation is, what are the tactics that abusers use to align people with them, helped me understand Stockholm syndrome, which is a big component.
What
Do you
is
know what
that?
Stockholm syndrome is? It's a phenomenon. Actually, it was coined after a bank robbery in Stockholm, Sweden, where the bank tellers that were had their lives threatened actually aligned with the plight of the bank robbers and wouldn't even testify against them in court, because they really empathized with, well, they had to rob the bank, they had to put a gun to my head, and that kind of thing. So it's called Stockholm syndrome. And this is exactly what these young and adult children are experiencing with parental alienation. They align with the abuser. Even though there's a false narrative, and in their heart of hearts, they know, like in my case, they know their mom loves them to the moon and back. They had 20 years. Well, one had 20 years with me and the other one had 30 years with me, and they know which parent cheats, lies, and steals and which parent doesn't. I mean, they know, but they're suppressing it because they live in fear of their alienator, and it's
Well,
much
well,
easier.
they're in their adults. What
Oh
and
yeah.
adulthood. So why participate in that? Like, if they know, why? That's mind blowing to me. And that's not just with your kids, that's with other. I'm like,
Right. Well, think about it like this, Kimberly. What about the adults that join a cult and stay in a cult, and they cut off their family, and they take, they might rob and steal money or whatever to give to this cult leader, but they're adults and they should know better. So the knowledge of parental alienation really helped me come to terms with the reality of this situation. There's also another thing called independent thinker phenomenon, and that is where these kids will say, well, it's my idea to estrange from my dad or my mom. That other parent had nothing to do with it, when really that's not the case at all. That indirectly, it could be subconsciously, it could be under the guise of care and love, that parent is doing everything in their power to destroy that loving bond that the one parent had with the other. And this happens to dads as well as moms. It's just so shocking. I felt like I would be the absolute last person that something like this would happen to, with the absolute connection and love I had with both of my children. But I do believe, like you said, that they have some kind of journey that they're supposed to be going through to be able to have to endure what they're doing. It took me so many years for my light bulb to go on. I can only imagine that it's going to take them a long time too. And I hope it's in this lifetime. But even then, so much damage has been done. So many, instances where trust has been lost. That, you have to look out for your safety as well. It's not like, even though the loving parents, unconditional arms are open wide, at the same time, you know, you have to really take things slow, because, especially if the abuse is done in their life. It's not just the abuser, the alienator. It's what they call the flying monkeys. All these other people that have contributed to the alienation, whether it is one of your best friends, whether it's a neighbor, whether it's even coworkers that sometimes even people's silence, when they say, well, I'm going to remain neutral, I'm not going to get involved. That silence is really supporting the alienator and the alienation. So it's a whole phenomenon. If any of your audience thinks they might be dealing with parental alienation, either in their own life, with their family, or if they experienced it as a kid, definitely there's a lot of great research out there on parental alienation. And actually, I was so amazed that Dr. Jennifer Harmon, who is a major researcher out of Colorado with parental alienation, she endorsed my 5-book series, as did Dr. Sam Vaknin, who is very knowledgeable about narcissistic personality disorders, the undiagnosed conditions of some of these malevolent abusers. And, Lisa Romano, some people have tuned into the Breakthrough Life Coach to get guidance on, family trauma and stuff. She endorsed my books. Tamara Sweeney, who has a 501c3 called Agape Love Dominates. She has, I don't know how many years, she's over a decade without her 4 children in her life. And it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing. And some of these abusers will take it to the extreme. I met an amazing man one time at a parental alienation conference, who finally, he's such a loving dad, but as soon as he was on to some things that were very unethical about his wife, he wanted to leave that marriage. And they had one child, and she was engaging in extreme parental alienation with this son. And finally, after many, many years of court battles, because these abusers love the court system, they love to, have you arrested or put orders against you or whatever they do. They want to drag you back into court. Finally, a judge saw the bigger picture and said, you should get full custody of of your son Eric, and you know, so please go and you can get him now, and here are the orders. And so he thought he'd call the police just to say, I just want to give you a heads up, that I've been granted full custody. I'm going to go get my son. And just to give you a heads up, because it's a very contentious, high conflict divorce. Really it's his wife that was high conflict. When he got there, he was surprised to see police were already there. He wasn't really quite sure why. Went up to the door and heard 2 gunshots. So the mother murdered their 8-year-old son Eric, and then turned the gun on herself and killed herself, because she was such an alienator that she did not want him to have custody of the child, and she didn't want him. She wanted to destroy him at any cost, and even if it meant taking her own life, she was going to do it. So these abusers are very dangerous. They can go to extremes to alienate you from your children.
Well, what about communication? There's such thing. I mean, they're adult. Are they still living in your ex-husband's house, or are they living in their own place?
Oh,
What?
are you talking my children?
Yeah, that too. I
I
mean,
don't know. I don't know. I have not had contact with one child for close to a decade. And the other
wow.
one, I don't know all the details myself. And at some point, for my own well-being, I need to, in my particular situation, just step back, and I need to focus on living life myself. I believe I'm still role modeling for my children that honesty and love and compassion is what it is all about. And
Yeah.
that's my message all the time. I'm not out to badmouth their father. In fact, I believe, even after everything I've been through, I believe that children need a relationship with both parents. So even with what I've endured, I just think at some point they need to understand what they're dealing with both. But,
Well,
I just am all about spreading the word of love and goodness, and in a very honest, authentic way. I think our voices matter, and the truth eventually prevails, but a lot of
yeah.
damage is done in the wake, unfortunately.
Well, I honestly believe you don't need your parents. Honestly, they might have given birth and be the process of you coming into this earth, but you really don't need them. To a certain degree, yeah, because diapers need to be changed and all this other stuff. But when you get to that point, you know, you don't need to look love. You don't need to look for pleasing or approval from your
Right.
parents.
That I
You
agree
need,
with. That I agree with, that you should really be independent, and you really should just, pursue your passions, and make a life for yourself. You know, I would love to be in my children's life still, but at this point I realize everyone has their own journey, and we're all at various stages of our awakening.
mm-hmm.
And that's something that no other people can control for other people,
No.
you
But
know.
some people don't understand that, and they suppress even more, or they're even
Sure.
more abusive, verbally abusive, because I think the younger generation, from the like my daughter, she's 23,
Mhm.
gonna be 23. Oh my gosh, she's gonna be 23 in a few months.
Wow.
Like, wait,
Well,
what?
happy birthday to your daughter.
She's a Capricorn,
Mhm.
and seeing, you know, it's funny because my spiritual awakening, when I started my spiritual awakening, I could go back now. She also started like a few months later
Mhm.
experiencing things. So I made sure, like, okay, whatever I experience and what I can understand, do more research, because I felt like, oh, she's going through some similar experiences.
Mhm.
But hers was very traumatic and dramatic
Mhm.
at the same time, because she went through a car accident. She was dealing with anxiety, generational anxiety disorder. That's what they labeled her on. And I was like, okay, she's got traumas that's manifesting, that's showing up in this anxiety,
Mhm.
you know. child traumas here. So I was like, okay. And I kept encouraging her, like, this is just a symptom. You can overcome this. You just got, be patient. When you recognize this feeling, just tell yourself, you're safe, you're okay, you're safe, you're okay. Because now
Mm.
it's in overdrive. Your
Right.
body's gotten so familiar with that feeling that it's taken over on every little thing that you're experiencing, thinking it's that. So we got to give it balance.
Right. And it's wonderful that she had you, even though you're saying that kids don't need their parents, it's wonderful that you were there to guide her on that. And I think as parents, you know, no matter what generation we are from, most parents do the absolute best that they can. That if
Yeah.
they are, you know, they follow the guidance that they believe is in the best interest of their kids to be safe and happy, and so the intentions are really good, and that's why we can understand sometimes, those of us that are evolved a little bit more, why our parents did some of the things that they did. They might not have done it out of an intention to harm at all. The end result might have been harmful, but that certainly might not have been what they set out to do. It's just that there are many, many different generations, and how we are guided to deal with certain things. Like, for example, I had, well, she's transitioned, but a wonderful aunt whose 13-year-old son passed away in just kind of a freak accident. And her mother basically said, don't ever talk about him again. Don't talk to anyone. Don't even think about him, and just go on with your life. And, I don't think that my great grandmother, what it would be my grandmother, I don't think that she was really meaning harm to her daughter. She was believing that that was the best way to handle the death, in that generation. You just don't talk about it.
A
Um,
program, a belief system.
it was a belief system, where now we've evolved to where there's self-help groups, there's literature, there's podcasts, people feel that talking about these things it's a much more healthier approach, because how painful it was for her to lose her son, but not to feel she had permission to even talk to anyone about it. The isolation she felt, that she must have felt. So anyway, what I was just trying to get to the point is that, as a parent, I always believed I was doing the absolute best for my children. Am I perfect? No, I don't think anyone's perfect. We're human.
Yeah.
But the intentions, of course, were all out of love to be the best you can be. And so, and we can only hope that people can kind of, at some point, come to an understanding. It doesn't mean that you have to put your boundaries down and say, well, I'll just accept anything. But I think understanding really helps you get through challenging times.
Well, yes, and it's questioning.
Questioning is
You
important.
know, questioning, are you happy with your life? Is your life the way you desire it to be?
Hmm.
If it's not, then there's something going on that you don't realize, you know. And you mentioned earlier, yes, parents, some parents, you know, who knows the true meaning of love? Because everyone's been taught conditional love,
Definitely. Yep.
but they really never experience unconditional love because that's a feeling that's already deep within us. Love is already in us. It's
Yes.
waiting for us to want to experience. But when you come into this earth, you're already being conditioned about what love is. And that's sad, and you talk about the parental alienation. When you were talking about that, I was like, oh, that's what the church does. That's what religion does. It alienates you from connecting
Hmm.
to the source, life force energy that is of pure love that's already inside you. Hello.
Hmm. Hmm.
And once it's like breaking free. It really is. That's the best way I could describe going through my experience and what I've
Right.
discovered in there. And I look back, I'm like, well, that's their program. That's what they believe. I love them at a distance,
Mhm.
and,
Well, and that's something important to know. You can love, but you can love at a distance because you do need to take care of your own well-being at some.
mhm. Well, and especially if I'm, my vibrations and my frequency is getting up, in that love level,
Mhm.
I can't allow them because they're stuck. I respect that, but hey, I gotta let you go. Bye. I
Mhm.
love you, but I don't need to talk to you. I don't need to associate with you
Mhm.
for my well-being because I'm going to stay up in this frequency vibration.
Yeah. And that's a journey to get to that point. It's really there it's there's a lot of ups and downs and trials and tribulations before you can kind of feel the strength to give yourself permission to have that healthy boundary.
I really don't look at it as a trial and tribulations. I just look at it more experiences in order for me to grow,
Right, right.
you know, and it's with what's going on now and all the chaos, you know, it's, this love sponsoring fear, fear sponsoring love, and this up and hill.
Mhm.
Hopefully, there'll be a little bit more balance,
Right.
but everything that has been broken, not serving our well-being and everything, it's crashing down, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Actually, the truth is coming out about all sorts of things. And in so many ways, it seems like we have kind of a spiritual revolution happening because more and more people are asking those questions. More and more people are waking up to understand the cognitive dissonance and try to make sense of things globally as well as things personally on a small level. So I think it's a real these are very unique times, and
Mhm.
but there's so much to be happy about because you know awakening is a good thing. I would rather live in love and truth and be authentic than live in a false reality and just go along.
You and me both, but I'm
Yeah.
like, honesty and integrity,
Hmm.
you know, and love are the greatest things that you can have in life. But us as Virgos,
Hmm.
we don't put up, we rather have the truth than the lie, deceit, and the bullshit.
Right. Although there are some Virgos that lie, cheat, and steal.
So, well, then you know what? I got the bullshit radar detector already built inside of me. And let me tell you something. Once I figured out how to use that power, I use it every day now.
Yeah, right. Actually, once you see things, you can't really unsee them.
Right.
Yeah,
And I'm more of an emotional intuitive transmedium.
right.
So I sense energies, and then I've got this built-in radar to where all I got to do is ask, because I'll always ask for the truth.
Hmm.
And I'll just go, is this person telling, because I feel like this person ain't telling me the truth. Is this person being honest with me? And I'll know right then and there if they are. And I'll just smile. Interesting.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I won't let them know that I know the truth.
No, you don't need to. It's not your role to call
Mm-mm.
them out on anything. It's just to be aware.
Right. And then I'll
No.
get to the point where, you know what? I had enough of this bullshit and walk away.
Yeah.
And
And
that
and you
was
leave people in the wake because I mean there are people that won't understand that. They'll keep constantly hounding you. They want it back like how it was, but it can't be. It
no,
can't be how it was because it might have been serving them, but it's not serving you at all.
no. And I think that this is why I feel like people now, being in relationships that are, like, oh, well, we just grew apart. No, the thing about
Mhm.
it is one was awakening and having self realization, God realization, and they're learning and they're growing and they're evolving. So they
Yes.
just went up a different level while you stayed here. You don't want
Yes.
to change. You don't see that you need to change yourself. This person recognized, I don't like this and I need to change.
Right. Because really, we're not out to change other people, and we can't change other people or other
No.
situations that are brought to our attention. We can only look at ourselves and decide how we respond, as opposed to just reacting. You start to learn the difference between the two.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you have do you have any like upcoming projects that are in
Yeah, I do actually. Well, I'm writing a sixth book in the True Deceit, False Love series. I have been asked to be on numerous podcasts and TV shows, so I'm, doing that to bring awareness. And but at some point, like in the next new year, I'm going to focus on some other literary endeavors. I've been asked to contribute to some magazines, some different articles, and I just have kind of want to take my projects in a different direction. So we will see what happens in the new year.
awesome. I wish you the best of success and on this new phase, new season, new
Yeah.
journey. Um, is there anything that you would like to also share with the audience about, what they could do now if they have any questions, how to get in contact with you, even though I have it written in the description notes, but go ahead and say it.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, I don't have people usually contact me personally because I'm not a life coach and I don't
Yeah.
profess to be. I'm an author. And so really if they want to find out, about my book signings or speaking engagements, actually speaking of that, I am going to be speaking at Columbia University in New York City sometime before the new year. Um, but they can always check me out on my website, which is www.godcametomygaragesale.com.
Awesome. And how can they get the True Deceit False Love?
Well, all of my books are on Amazon. Okay, so they are just a click away, and they're also at Barnes and Noble. And then my publisher is Balboa Press, which is a division of Hay House. And Hay House, of course, is the publishing company that has a lot of self-help books, a lot of books on spirituality, great resources there. But Amazon is a real easy place to get a hold of my books, and there are e-versions as well. Um,
What about audio?
I have not done that. I thought about it, but I didn't want to make the investment in it.
Ah,
Um,
gotcha.
yeah, and that's a whole nother thing, a whole nother aspect. And it's the books have been doing very well, resonating with a lot of people, kind of the way they are, whether it's paperback or the e versions. So it's not a money making endeavor, as anyone who is an author would know. It's more just a passion, to try to spread awareness about some of these things. Offer, in my case, the True Deceit, False Love series provides a creative approach, some different resources to look into when they're trying to connect the dots, like we talked about.
Yes, I love connecting the dots. Now, I look at life like, okay, this is just an adventure. It's never a dull moment, that's for damn
No, no.
sure. But it's just an adventure, and I'm here to learn, gain knowledge, wisdom, understanding in order to get to where I need to go, who to be,
Hmm.
and I'm on this kick about we all have a false identity of who we are, you know, through our beliefs and programmings and traumas. And if we don't learn our history, we're destined to repeat it. So
Right.
that's where I go back and hit, and it's fascinating to me. I'm like, holy shit, how do they know how to do this stuff like back in this time? Like this is like 90,000 over 100,000, 200,000 years before, you know, and I'm just blown away by it. So I'm like happy on this journey. I'm like, oh, I want to go here and check this out, you know?
Right, right. Well, we keep on striving for authenticity,
Mhm.
and for the truth and, our self-actualization. And it's an exciting journey in many ways.
And I think many, I mean, I don't know about like that point, or it could be the crossroad point, that breaking point. I think I was at my breaking point, but I feel like deep down inside, it was like my soul is trying to catch up to my, where I was to say, okay, it's time for the truth now. I think I felt ready for it because I was just done.
Yeah, that's actually a really neat way that you explain it like that, because usually it is just kind of, we might say a breaking point, but that has negative connotations. It really can just be a crossroads where all of a sudden the light bulb is illuminated and, you are meant to go on a different path. And it's one of awakening, and
Hmm.
it is life changing. And even though you might have to leave behind people or situations, there's tremendous sadness in some of the loss. What you gain in clarity and in, realizing your worth and your potential kind of outshines some of those losses.
And you know what? Also, freedom,
Yeah. Yeah.
freedom. Once you experience what a little bit of freedom feels like, then you just want to keep more to keep that
Right.
freedom.
Right.
And then once you have that, you don't want to go back either.
Right. Right.
You don't. You're like, what was I thinking? Like I have those moments. What was I thinking? Why did I stay for so long? Holy shit. Like I'm like, thank God I'm here now and not there.
Right,
So I
right. And I
sort
think
of
it's all part of our journey. I
Mhm.
mean, every single experience is just leading us closer and closer to how we're supposed to be authentic with our authenticity.
Mhm. I'm all about, transform. You gotta awaken,
Yeah.
learn, evolve, transform, and become.
Hmm.
And when you could be your true, it's like your soul lining up to this machine that you're in and experiencing everything that you wanted to in your soul form in the present now.
Well, I don't know if I'm there yet, but I feel like I'm getting closer and closer.
You sure are beautiful. I want to thank you again for joining me and having this moment with you. This I love. This is what I'm passionate about. This sparks me up and lights me up.
Yeah.
Having people like you on my show. It
Oh, you
really
are
does.
so kind, and it's really such an honor. And thank you for having me here and having this great discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. You never know who I'm going to get on my guests on my show with Wake Up with KC. And just to let you know, jewelry is provided by Pretty Bling Boutique, and makeup and skincare is provided by Pharmacy. If you want to know more, click on the button below. If you want to get Marnie's books, go check her out on Amazon, and there's some links below that you can also click on as well. Until then, stay tuned to the next episode of Wake Up with KC.